Anyway, joining us now is Congresswoman Harriet Hageman of Wyoming. You might remember she took on Liz Cheney and defeated her soundly and is the new Congresswoman from the great state of Wyoming. How are you?
I'm wonderful, Sean. Thank you for having me.
I think my endorsement pushed you over the top. I think, what did you win by, 30 some odd points?
38 points, and I'm sure that it was all you, Sean.
It was all me. I get all the credit. No. I get all the blame if something doesn't go right. Trust me, I'm very aware of how this system works. Let's talk about the need to get this done expeditiously. Jim Jordan, who I'm supporting, Steve Scalise, who's a great guy, but I just prefer Jordan over him. I think he's better suited for this job at this time and can bring the conference together. What's your take, and where do we stand right now?
Well, I endorsed Jim Jordan last week. And so I've been a strong supporter of his from the beginning. With that said, I think that Steve Scalise would also be a good speaker. I'm good friends with him. But right now, I believe we need someone like Jim Jordan with as strong as he is on the particular issues that are of importance to me, to the state of Wyoming, and I think to most people in the United States. He's a solid conservative. He's a truly effective leader. He has been a warrior in terms of trying to expose what the Biden crime family, as well as some of the other things that have been going on in our federal government, both with the Select Committee on Weaponization of the federal government as well as Judiciary. I serve with him on both of those committees. He has truly been someone who has been willing to take whatever risks are necessary so that the American people have an understanding of what has been going on with their government. And I think he will continue to do that as Speaker. I think that he will continue to expose the corruption in the Biden family, the Biden administration, and I think he will hold people accountable as we need to for their bad acts over the last couple of years, including Mayorkas, Ray, Garland, and people like that. I just think that he would be a great speaker, and I'm supporting him.
Pretty disgusting, the news dump of last night, which is, here we are on the verge of Israeli now and their counteroffensive. All of a sudden at 8 p.m. Eastern time last night, the Biden administration just drops this little bombshell. Joe Biden voluntarily spoke with Robert Hur, the special counsel, looking into his document scandal, which, by the way, I'm sure is going to be whitewashed because we have a dual justice system. But obviously using the cover of a big news story to get this story buried, which, by the way, it successfully, worked. It always does. That's beyond frustrating to me. What was your reaction?
I had the exact same reaction. It's what happens with this administration on almost every big story out there. They conspire and work with the mainstream media, such as CNN, MSNBC, other organizations, to try to time and to manipulate particular stories to limit the amount of information that the American public has. And again, I think that's why Jim Jordan is so important at this point, because so much of what he's been doing, it relates to accountability and transparency. I think those are two of the most important things that we can do as the Republican-led Congress. We only have 1/2 of the government, and as a result, we are limited as to what we can do. We see that with the appropriations bills. We have already sent 4 appropriations bills to the Senate for them to take up so that we can fund the government, so that we don't find ourselves in the mess that we found ourselves in 10 days ago. Yet the Senate hasn't taken up any one of those. If the Senate were to pass those 4 bills, that would fund 70% of the government. So that as we go forward with the next state appropriations bills, we are not dealing with the same kind of situation of shutting down the government. Yet,
well, will we get the other 8 done by the 45-day extended deadline?
Well, I sure hope so, but there's nothing that prevents the Senate from taking up those 4 appropriations bills right now. But what we have is we have a Senate that's controlled by the Democrats. We have the White House controlled by the Democrats. So what the Republicans have to do is we have to focus on getting our appropriations bills out, which we have been doing, number one. And number 2, we need to be sending over conservative legislation, which, again, we have been doing, and I believe that under a Speaker Jim Jordan, we will continue to do. We have to get border security, for example. H.R. 2 is sitting in the Senate right now. H.R. 2 is the very best border security bill that has ever passed Congress. It's sitting in the Senate right now without being taken up. H.R. 1, That is our energy security bill. Again, it's sitting over there in the Senate. They won't take it up. The House has been working. We will continue to work. We will continue to do our job. We need to have a speaker in place so we can do that. I'm optimistic that we're going to get that done this week. And again, I think with either Steve or John or Jim, we would have an excellent leader, but we need to get someone in place so that we can move forward with our agenda and start doing things for the American public. Right?
Do you have a sense where your conference is leaning in terms of Jim Jordan versus Steve?
The numbers that I see is that you see more people who have publicly come out and endorsed Jim Jordan, but there are still a lot of people who have not publicly stated. So I don't want to say one way or the other. A lot of good allies of mine, a lot of good conservatives have come out in favor of Jim Jordan, but there are also some great people who have come out in support of Steve Scalise. Right now, I can't tell you which way they're leaning. I can just say publicly more have supported Jim Jordan, but I don't know that that means so much right now.
Do you support
more?
Do you support getting rid of one member's right to vacate the chair?
Yeah, I do, because I think it's too disruptive. I don't think that you can have the sort of Damocles hanging over your head like this if you've got a situation where some of the accusations and complaints related to Kevin McCarthy have nothing to do with Kevin McCarthy as a speaker or as a leader. They have to do with the system that has been created here over the last several decades. The bottom line is that Congress needs to retake its authority for legislating. And for too long, our congressional representatives have set policies where they have abdicated their responsibility and given that authority to unelected bureaucrats in the executive branch, in administrative agencies. We need to fundamentally change the way that Congress works. That's a long-term plan. That's a long-term project. That's not happening next week. It's not happening in 3 months. It's not happening probably in the next year. But if we can increase our majority in the House, retake the Senate, and retake the White House, I believe that we can fundamentally change the way Washington, D.C. works that will be for the betterment of everybody in this country. That has to be the long-term goal.
Let me ask you, what is the feeling in Wyoming now about Liz Cheney? I see she's written a book. You know, there's a couple of things about Liz Cheney that just puzzle me, and I maybe you have more insight into this than I do, because I knew her, got along great with her. I knew her dad, who was, you know, Bush and Cheney lied and people died. Darth Vader, Dick Cheney, and all that they went through, and everything with Scooter Libby as chief of staff, which never should have happened. And what I have a hard time, I understand maybe, okay, she doesn't like Donald Trump. There's plenty of room in the January 6th hearings for her and her Democratic colleagues, because there wasn't a single person that didn't vote to impeach Trump and didn't hate Trump on that January 6th committee. So, the deck was stacked from day one. But what I don't understand, and where I think the real failure is, they have plenty of room and latitude to bludgeon Trump, but they should have come up with a strategy to prevent what happened on January 6th from ever happening again. I have a hard time understanding why she didn't analyze. I have 4 people on tape, including Donald Trump himself, saying that they were in the Oval Office days before January 6th, and Donald Trump wanted to authorize troops to be ready and available if, God forbid, anything happened or went wrong that day. That hardly sounds like an insurrectionist attitude to me. Then we find out from the Capitol Police Chief that his numerous requests based on actionable intelligence were ignored when he wanted to call up the Guard in the days leading up to January 6th. They never talked to him. They never talked to the Sergeant of Arms. They never got Nancy Pelosi's cell phone. She's in charge of security at the Capitol. They never asked Muriel Bowser why she, in writing, put out she wouldn't accept Guard troops, or Lester Holt's report that, this was a law enforcement failure of enormous magnitude, in as much as they had actionable intelligence. Everybody had it in the days leading up to January 6th that there were going to be troublemakers there. Why didn't they act? What are they going to do to prevent the next one? How do they fix it? That wasn't even brought on the table. So my question is, why didn't Liz Cheney do a thorough job? Why was it she only wanted the bludgeon Trump part of that job done?
Because that wasn't her goal. That wasn't any of their goals. The goal was not to find out what happened on January 6th and find a way and ensure that it was prevented. It could never be repeated. The goal of that committee was to make it so that Donald Trump never got near the White House again. And in order to do that, they had to persecute and prosecute his surrogates. And that's what they've done. That's what the prosecutor, the Department of Justice has done. That's what the judges here in Washington, D.C. have done. So you have to understand what the purpose of the committee was. And it wasn't a fact-finding committee for the purposes of resolution. It was a fact-finding committee for purposes of persecution. And it was to make sure that an outsider, a populist like Donald Trump, would never see power again. So the way that people in Wyoming look at Liz Cheney is they understand that. They understood that. They recognize what the purpose of it was. And I think the problem for someone like Liz Cheney and others on that committee, perhaps, but I think Liz Cheney most specifically, is that she cannot figure out why people would not follow her lead in wanting to make sure that that happened. She completely misread the electorate in Wyoming. She completely misread the electorate frankly, across the entire country. But that's because Liz Cheney has never been in touch with your average person. She was raised in a very political family. She was raised in a very sheltered environment, if you will, of actually working with and understanding how the real world works. It's one of the reasons, and I'm not saying this across the board, but I think with some people, politics should not be a family business. Politics is about power, and you don't hand down. You hand down a ranch from a father to a son or a father to a daughter. You hand down a dry cleaner from mom and dad to the next generation. You hand down businesses from one generation to the next. Handing down politics from one generation to the next is handing power from one generation to the next. And if you don't understand who and what the people want and who they are, I think it becomes very difficult to actually carry out and represent them well. And I think that Liz Cheney is an example of that. There are others throughout history, but I think she's one of the most recent examples of that. And so I think Liz Cheney believed, I am Liz Cheney, I am Dick Cheney's daughter. That's the end of the discussion. What happened with Donald Trump was reprehensible. I didn't like his politics. I didn't like the way he spoke. I didn't like the fact that he was a populist. I didn't like his dismantling of the military-industrial complex. I'm going to destroy him. And when January 6th happened, she thought that that was her opening to make sure that it did happen, that he was never able to get near the White House again. She failed, and in her frustration, she's still out there, I guess you'd say, railing against the sky.
Yeah, well, it certainly is a big turnabout, I would have thought, through the experience of her father. They wanted to put her father in jail. They wanted to put Scooter Libby in jail and destroy his life. And it's just a disgrace. Anyway, appreciate it. Harriet Hageman, thank you so much for being with us.